Hello and welcome back to the YouTube studio here at the Munich Security Conference. I'm Jack Kelly from TLDR News. And in this session, I'm joined by Richard Haass, President of the Council on Foreign Relations. Very nice to have you here.
Great to be had.
Let's dive straight into the topic of the conference, obviously the war in Ukraine. It's been going on for nearly a year now. How do you see this reaching some form of conclusion? What do you think this looks like as it plays out?
Actually, I'm going to correct you. It's been going on since 2014.
Sure.
Just this latest chapter, this more intense chapter. Look, a year ago, if we had had this conversation and you had told me we'd be where we are, I would have said essentially that's almost too good to be true, that Ukraine could do that well militarily, that the West would hold together, that the Russians would do that badly. So that's all good news. Bad news is the destruction the war is causing, the Russian preparations for an offensive. And if you ask me a year from now, if we were to meet again, I think we're going to see something pretty similar to where we are. I don't expect the next year to bring fundamental changes in who controls what amount of territory.
Some people are obviously worried about an escalation of this conflict, be it nuclear or other states getting involved. Is that something that worries you as well or not?
Not a whole lot. I don't see the Russians taking on other states. They can't defeat Ukraine. Why would they want to expand the war? The nuclear thing, look, I can't sit here and tell you it can't happen. Putin has deinstitutionalized decision-making in Russia. So if he wanted to do something, he possibly could. But I can't figure out exactly how the use of nuclear weapons would help him. The threat has helped him to some extent because it's got us talking about it, in some ways deterring ourselves from doing certain things. But we have to be really careful here. We don't want to send the signal that threatening to use nuclear weapons, much less using them, could help. Because guess what? He and every other person around the world will then say, wow, these toys really do have value. Let's get more of them. We do not want to do that.
Talking about other people watching this, are you concerned about the rise of more proficient autocrats around the world? It seems that it's becoming, people are getting better at it almost.
Well, I'm not sure they're getting better. Take the Chinese. I worry about their perceptions of this. I don't want them to think that one can acquire territory through the use of force and get away with it. Taiwan, obviously, is what comes to mind. But the Chinese have their own inbox full of problems, from demography to economic to environmental. The Russians have an inbox that's terrible. This is a failing country in many ways. What it has, we thought, was a failing country with a good military. It's not even that. It's got oil and it's got nuclear weapons. So no, I think autocrats are their own worst enemies. The best thing we can do is show that democracy is preferable. When we get up in the morning, we have to show that democracy works politically, that it delivers economically. If we do that, a lot of people in these countries currently run by autocrats, they may start asking some difficult questions.
Now, obviously, negotiations collapsed last year in Turkey. What do you think we need to do to be able to reach that place again when negotiations can restart?
Look, I'm not confident. People only negotiate when they, in any way that could lead to something, when they have both the desire and the ability. I don't see those there. Neither side right now has any desire to negotiate. Mr. Putin feels time is on his side, and he worries that any compromise would make him look weak at home and therefore invite challenge at home. Ukraine now has been hardened by the war, understandably, the atrocities, and they've also been lifted up by how well they've done militarily. So there is no desire in Ukraine to compromise. If anything, they're escalating their demands. It's not just all the territory, every square inch of it, going back to what they had when they became independent, economic reparations and war crimes accountability. So the gap between the sides is enormous. And I simply don't see that changing for some time to come, probably until the situation on the ground forces one or the other side to begin to lean in that direction.
And finally, it's been notable that a number of countries in the global south haven't gone along with the Western sanctions regime and the Western approach to Putin. Is that something that surprises you, and what should we learn from that?
Disappoints me. I think we've made a mistake, we the United States, in how we frame this, to make this kind of the good guys against the bad guys, Democrats against autocrats. Well, a lot of the countries we want to support us, they're not Democrats either. They may not be autocrats, they may be somewhere in between. We should make this about the rule of law. We should make this about, hey, you don't want to get invaded either. We do not want to bring about a world where countries invade other countries with a degree of impunity or regularity. That, I think, might be a more attractive argument. But to simply argue this on the basis of democracy versus autocracy, that's not a winning argument. And also, where were we, for example, during COVID? If we had done more to help these countries with vaccines, we might have gotten a little bit more payback now. You can't show up when a crisis happens and suddenly say, hey, side with us, when you weren't there when it was their crisis. and when you make this, you give countries choices that they're not comfortable making.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your insight. It's been really interesting.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care, Jack.